Vanakkam and welcome to Sudarshan's podcast. I'm Sudarshan, the host. Today I have Vinay Raghavendran, who is the head of GTM tools at Whatfix, one of the important SaaS companies in Bangalore, I would say. Hey Vinay, welcome to the show.
Hi Sudarshan, thanks for having me.
How are you doing, Vinay?
I'm all good. Bangalore,
Yes. You're liking it. Like we are in summer, dude.
yeah, it is. But coming from Chennai, this is still winter for me.
Shit. So, when did you move back to Bangalore?
Been about 5 months, September and October last year.
So for listeners' context, Vinay was working with another company in Chennai before Whatfix, and now we are, of course, Chennai Bangalore debate always goes on my podcast. Yes. So yeah, recently in the previous episodes we have spoken about product management and a little bit of career, and again in this episode another rising or emerging role called GTM engineers. And of course, from not a GTM person here, but I'm like very curious to know what is going there. Since I work at a company who make a software for salespeople. So I just want to know what's happening in this space. And one of the recent article which I read from Clay is how they are building their GTM engineering team. And to give you some context, SaaS sales, usually, it's a mix of inbound, outbound, other multiple people involved, like SDREs, a bit of pre-sales. So a lot happens. Now, GTM engineer is some role that is like they are claiming that is gonna replace all these multiple roles. Like, what do you think, Vinay? Is that going to happen?
So the way I look at a GTM engineering function specifically is traditionally what's been happening is you have these multiple departments running in silos, right? You have predominantly marketing and sales that never talk to each other. Even if they talk to each other, it doesn't
Okay.
make sense. And you have finance functions, you have other functions that are basically working out of silos. Now, at this point in time, I think a lot of companies have realized that and they have started with some sort of a RevOps MarTech uh, combination where they look at, hey, how do I bring all of these together and have a single source of truth for my sales folks and for my marketing folks to have everything in one place, right? In terms of both operations and in terms of revenue engineering, right? But the GTM engineering role specifically, it is more relevant today than ever because one, uh, it's a new term that was coined very recently after all of your AI agents,
LLMs.
right?
Yeah.
Now, what happens in a GTM engineering role is very simple. You have multiple tools that run your ecosystem. How do you merge all of that? And how do you make sense of all of that data? Right? So a GTM engineer would be somebody predominantly would have one Salesforce engineer. If you had, let's say, a Salesforce development team, a Salesforce admin, you might have a couple of sales operations people that are looking at just specific tools, right? But a GTM engineer has two things. One, they understand the entire sales process, which becomes very critical to their role because if you have a very good understanding of from the point of first touch to the point of uh, customer service and sales, throughout that customer journey, how do customers behave? And more importantly, how do we behave internally as an organization? And how do the tools behave internally? Right. So a GTM engineer role is in a way is kind of merging all of these technologies together while also handling the people side of it, which is looking at what are the different processes that we are currently following and how do we make sure that those processes are optimized, and then how do we make sure that all of these tools are talking to each other and they work with each other.
Interesting. But what we are saying kinds of sounds like very enterprisey. is GTM engineer is something for enterprise companies, or is that it is necessary for any small scale company have a small sales team of like 20, 40 folks?
So today we have a lot of talk about AI agents and AI automations, right? If you look at AI, the first step to AI is workflow. If then logic, you say, hey, if this happens, then do this. You set up that workflow for a tool or for a process, and that basically does the job for you.
Yeah, yeah,
Agentic AI is a bit more complex in the sense that you have an LLM layer which is on top of some sort of a workflow where you could instruct it to build specific things, right? Or solve specific challenges, and it keeps learning through that. Now, when you are looking at who needs a GTM engineer, it is anybody where you have repetitive tasks. Let's take a simple example. Let's say you want to run an email campaign. What do you need to run an email campaign? You need a list, obviously. That's the starting point. Before that, you need an ICP, which is who is my ideal customer profile and which are the demographics that I want to target, right? So when you're looking at that, you come from an ICP definition to understanding what are the different roles that you want to target, what are the different designations you want to target, and then you take that in a list, build that list out. You add email and phone numbers to that because salespeople cannot then reach out to them, and then you validate that. Then you get that into a CRM. The CRM has some sort of feature or an integration to run those email sequences or calling
yeah,
sequences. Then you go through follow-up motions. There's the entire GTM playbook you can design, and from there you will look at the responses and start making your opportunities.
yeah,
This is a very simplistic flow of how any outbound motion would work.
yeah,
Similarly, inbound motions are there where the customer goes to the website, they fill up a form, that data comes in, we reach out to them, and then that process goes. So it really doesn't depend on the size of the company, but if you want to do less or if you want to do more with less, right? If you want to optimize processes, all of these things that I talked about can be automated to a certain extent, except for the actual sales part. Until you create a list, validate it, you have tools today that can do all of this. Is a very good example.
mhm,
So they have understood the customer journey and they have created a tool that will follow that same journey, right? And that is why they are successful. So if you use any kind of tool that gives you an output based on a specific logic, then that is all you're already using some part of GTM engineering, right? You're just focused on that particular tool. Let's say you use Zoom Info, that is just giving you contacts. Now that is part of the entire GTM strategy and GTM engineering tools framework, right? But when you combine everything together and then you are solving everyday problems which are repetitive in nature, that is where a GTM engineer comes in. Anything that has to do with, let's say, user onboarding, right? There are multiple tools organizations use, both enterprise and small companies. Now, if you have to, every time somebody joins, if you have to give them access to multiple tools individually, that becomes a problem, right?
mhm,
So you can use these tools to kind of tackle that side of the equation, which is sales operations side of things. And you can also look at a GTM tool perspective and say, hey, if I have my CRM connected to a call recorder, can I generate insights out of it? So the scope is literally very wide in terms of what a GTM engineer can do and cannot do.
mhm,
But I think these roles are still up and coming, and there is definitely scope. If you are in the tech space or if you want to get into the marketing technology side of things or revenue operations, then the best way to look at this is, at least for me, it happened through a gradual, uh, first I started with Salesforce administration and then I got into administering other tools. Then I started understanding the entire process of how all these tools integrate with each other. And then you go into business process side of things, understand how do you optimize processes. And then finally you when you have an overall vision of how all of these tools interact with each other, then I think you can call yourself a GTM engineer.
Coming to the same question, want to ask you this. Yep, GTM engineering something is where a lot of repetitive tasks are automated and processes are set. When a small company who is like 2, 3 years old and they are finding what is working for them, until that they should go juggle multiple things and find what works for them, right? So when will be the right time for a small company to hire or uh, make a role something like GTM engineer?
Okay. So I there is no specific benchmark to this as far as I know. But at the moment when you realize that you are getting a lot of interest in the business, but there are a lot of places where there are drop-offs. Right? A drop-off could be, let's say, you're getting a lot of meetings, but you're not able to convert, or you're not getting a lot of meetings, but you're getting a lot of inbounds, and they are not showing up. Right? Whenever you see a drop off in metrics, as long as you don't have any metrics, it's fine because you're still building. But once you start seeing some intent, and once that intent is not getting converted into the next step, whatever it might be, right? At the very top of the funnel, it could be I'm able to set up meetings, but I'm not able to bring them onto the meetings. I have, let's say, 10% show rate on my calls book, right? Or at the bottom of the funnel, I'm saying, hey, I'm sending proposals, but after that, no one's coming back, right? So these are touch points which are very important to the business, and these are frictions that you want to solve very early on in your business, because then once your structure is defined, and then once you have a playbook of these are the 10 steps that I need to take to solve for this X problem, a GTM engineer can help you get there really fast, right? Because they understand how tools work, they understand how the technology works, and they also understand partly how the process works.
That's a good answer. So, at concluding that, you said GTM engineer who understand tools better, technology better, and processes better. When it comes to technology, right? And of course, you look at any SDRs, most of them are recent grads, and AI is maybe a 2, 3 year old, maybe SDR turned AE. I mean, I'm just telling the pattern which I saw, right? So this is how it is working, right? For anyone who wants to get into GTM from now on, is there a technical round or a technical knowledge is needed?
There usually is. It wouldn't depend on your qualification or whether you have relevant experience there for most companies, but it really depends on whether you are able to think about a particular problem and solve for it. It really doesn't matter if you come from an engineering background, or if you come from a computer science background, or from any other background. But as long as you have the tech know-how to a large extent, obviously, and if you are able to get into a tool, understand how the setup works, right? uh, because you're middled with a lot of tools, you go into the setup, you figure out, hey, if I do this, this is what happens. Then I think people are starting to look at how you solve problems more than whether you have the right experience. Of course, it depends on the stage of the company also. If they are looking at somebody at a managerial level, then obviously you'll need to have had experience with building or solving problems in those many tech
Mm.
stacks. But if you're starting out fresher, if you show that a rigor and understanding of the entire customer journey and how that correlates with the tech stack as well as the processes, I think you should have a very good chance.
Mm.
So uh, there are a lot of good starting points, especially today. Coursera, or just find out YouTube videos and start learning about tech stack and GTM engineering and all of that. Again, AI is, as you know, the future of things. We'll get there, but uh, this is like the base foundation you need to have in terms of getting into this.
Yeah, I just want to talk about your role, right? Head of GTM tools. What is this? Like, I haven't seen someone has this title because maybe, like I said previously, from a non GTM background. But is there any, or it is very little known in the market?
Yeah, so if you go on Sales Navigator and edit this one and put in GTM Tools Manager or it, you'll get 70,
Okay.
80 results. So
Oh,
it
okay.
is as a tool, as a role itself, it is pretty new, but it is not the function and the role is not new. Just the title is new. Right? So usually anybody from sales operations, sales op revenue operations can fit into this bucket.
Hmm.
And a lot of the times there is no specific definition for this. So like my previous role, I was in the marketing team. So, but doing this function, right?
Hmm.
So they're probably not calling it out explicitly, but you will see that that gets called out more because people are now recognizing and companies are now recognizing that there is a separate requirement for this kind of a function. So GTM tool specifically is again a subsegment of your GTM engineering or revenue operations.
Okay. Okay.
So what I do is there are multiple tools and vendors you use on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Be for
GTM
marketing
teams. Yeah.
GTM team. So this is specific to the GTM tools that the organization uses. If you have 100 tools, and GTM might use 5 or 10 tools or even 30. Managing that tech stack comes under a GTM tools manager purview.
Okay.
So understanding what are the different tools that we have, how do they integrate with each other, and what is future scope for integrating other tools or getting new tools that will complement whatever we have. All to solve one purpose, which is help sales, marketing, and growth teams to do their job better.
Yeah.
So that is kind of the interface that you are in, at least I am in, with a GTM tools role. And it sometimes might also include looking at automation, looking at process enhancement as a scope in your role, right? So automations can be through AI engineering and again AI agents, and you can also look at workflows, your standard JPA kind of workflows, right? So we build all of that, either build or buy uh, through vendors to all particular challenges in the organization.
Sorry to say this, but it kind of sounds like IT team for GTM team. Is that, or maybe IT plus operations team for GTM?
So there is a difference. The difference is an IT team would, let's say, bring in a particular tool like SAP, and then that's where their job ends. And the business function uses SAP to do what they need to do with SAP. It's the same here with a slight twist because we manage the entire portfolio of those tools. So if you have Salesforce, everything that goes into Salesforce is also part of our purview, right? That is where revenue operations will integrate with the GTM tools or a GTM engineering person or team. You will strategize together on what are the different processes that we are currently following, how do we improve that, and then we'll build out those processes within these tools also. So within Salesforce, within Outreach, any of the 100 other platforms that we have, the onus of maintaining the database to making sure that the processes within these systems work to satisfy a particular requirement or a use case. And this is not the entire scope. This is probably 20-30% of the entire scope. The bigger scope lies in understanding what are the other tools that are in the market for specifically automation. So your 70% of the time goes into understanding business use cases and business problems. And tools are just a way of solving them, right? Understanding what each different function or each different uh, team is facing and then solving for that through these tools is what.
Mm.
That is it might from the outside look like a procurement team even, right, or an
Mm.
IT
Mm.
team. But in reality, it is much more complex than that because you are interfacing with business and you're trying to understand their problems and you're just trying to solve those problems through these tools that we use.
So here the important part is how you are solutioning, not what tools you are bringing, right? IT team takes care of bringing the tools. You takes care of setting the process, using the tools wisely, and make the sales or GTM teams work better.
So sales operations, revenue operations, GTM, everything is into one bucket. And most of the companies have revenue ops as the parent, and then use sales ops and GTM sits under revenue operations. So there are different strategic departments within revenue operations as well. And through that, what happens is, let's take a very simple example of lead qualification, right? Let's say I am currently not qualifying my leads. It is just left to the BDR or SDR to qualify them. They have their own logic to qualify. This is a very, let's assume it is a very early stage startup and there is no specific qualification criteria set, right? So now when you look at lead qualification, there are multiple ways you can qualify a lead. The most common ones are BANT and MEDPIC, right? So
Okay.
there are frameworks which is made specifically for lead qualification that you
Mm.
use. So understanding how and BANT and MEDPIC for each company will be different, right?
Okay.
Each of these frameworks define
Can
particular.
you, sorry to interrupt, can you double click on that Manton and what is another one? Can you like go a little detail on that? I just want to understand what are they.
So BANT is basically, these are all techniques that you can use to figure out whether the customer is interested in your product or not. So BANT expands into budget, authority, need, and timing. Right.
Okay.
So if you look at it, does my prospect have the budget and do they need my product? Do they have the authority, which is are their decision maker? And is this the right time for them to be buying our product? Right. Similarly, you have MEDPIC, which is more of a contextual framework than BANT. Right? BANT is
Okay.
a very specific approach, whereas MEDPIC uses a bunch of different criteria. M stands for metric, E stands for economic buyer, D stands for decision criteria, and then there is another D which is decision process. Then there is paper process and implicate the pain, who are the champions, and competition. So when you're looking at all of these, you're trying to understand on the call or on email with the prospect what are the measurable metrics that they are tracking if this project goes through. Who is the economic buyer? What is the decision criteria for them to pick us?
Okay.
Do we have competition? Who
Okay.
are the champions for the project? What is the paper process, which is
Champions
basically
are someone who is same as decision makers, right? Who is going, yeah.
today the decision making process has become more complex than ever,
Mm.
especially B2B.
Okay.
It was a very straightforward linear progression. Now there are multiple teams involved and multiple decision makers involved. The larger the organization, if you go to Fortune 1000, Fortune 500 companies, there are literally tons of departments that are involved in the entire decision making process. The economic buyer will be a different person, decision maker will be a different person, and so on. So it gets very difficult to understand whether this deal will go through or not without having all of these data points.
To understand this, sorry to break you. Economic wire mostly will be someone in finance, maybe decision makers or functional heads.
It
Is that
will
the right way to put it?
correct. It might differ from company to company also. It depends on how their teams are structured internally. So sometimes if you take analytics as a function, sometimes it is left to individual departments to take decisions on any analytics project. So if you are doing supply chain analytics, then the supply chain department will be responsible for the entire decision making. Whereas in some companies, they have a centralized analytics COE, and that team will define and decide the entire budget as well as the vendors that they are working with, right? So it will vastly differ, but yes.
Interesting. Right. So, like, we were talking about this for a while now. We're just touching things in randomly, right? But hope we have given a good basic context for listeners to go ahead from us, right? I just want to understand how a SaaS sales 10 years back and how it changed now. I mean, for last 2 years, this AI agents RAG buses going on. But are people up to date with that? Still a question. Many are not. Because they have. I mean, they are going doing some process. They don't want to break it. Don't want to teach the people with the new processes and put a pass to that, right? And what do you think the sales is going to be in next 5, 10 years? So yeah, Vinay, we were talking about GTM engineering, the advent of AI and how it is changing sales, and a little bit on what your role does. I just want to understand. I think we gave a good context about what's happening. I just want to understand how sales is something 5 years back and what's happening now. Even though after this rise of AI, LLMs, RAG, many of the teams are not up to date with their processes, right? They still stuck to their previous processes, tools. They don't want to disturb their sales agents. Okay, and what is going to happen in next 5, 10 years? I just want to, I mean, like, see your view on this.
Understood. So, see, there's a lot of hype about AI in the last 3, 4 years, and especially in the last 6 to 8 months, right? But if you look at it, it is very simply put the advent of ChatGPT that created all of this. Why? Because the common man now has access to systems which is so advanced that they feel like it is going to take over everything. Nobody can predict the future. But what, in my opinion, what I think, the way I think about this is there are companies that are using AI in different forms today. Some might be using just ChatGPT and all of these ancillary tools to uh, kind of write emails, draft, you know, business plans and stuff. There are some companies that have gone a little bit above that, and they have figured out systems and processes where they are running automations on top of it. There are some companies that are thinking about the future, and then they are building entire teams on top of AI layers. So if you look at these three different segments, the incentive to start for somebody with AI is going to be the speed at which it can deliver and the accuracy at which it can perform, right? But looking at the security side of things on AI, there are a lot of companies still that are hesitant to even onboard a simple ChatGPT on their ecosystem, right? Unless it comes from, let's say, a Gemini or Claude, then there's a lot of infosec requirements also that come into play. There are larger companies are thinking about this proactively, but there are companies that probably don't have an idea or they don't understand the implications of this. That is one side of the story where that fear comes from of not using AI immediately because you don't know what's happening with your data. And that will take some time for both companies to create ways to manage that or for users to adopt to it. And in you mentioned something really interesting, which was you said that people are reluctant to put away what they are doing currently and then bring in new processes or tools, right? And my point of view is very simple. If you're comfortable with, see, there'll always be some sort of a you can't call it a risk, but there'll always be some sort of a trade-off when you're using it, right? If the company or you as an individual or as an entrepreneur, if you are okay with that trade-off, then or if you're okay with that, it is some sort of a small risk on your data.
True, true.
And if you have measures to control that, then go ahead. But if you still feel like, hey, AI is not for me at this point in time, you don't really have to use it, right?
Mm,
The smaller brother for AI is automation.
mm,
You can take a Zapier today, integrate it with your system, give it if then logic, and it will do 60-70% of what AI agents can do. What are AI agents really doing from a larger generative AI concept is that it is able to pull context
mm.
in systems and then give you output the way you want it.
A little personalization, if I'm not wrong.
So personalization is just one part of it. Want to create email templates or calling notes and all of that, you can do AI personalization through Gen AI. The other part of it is understanding and knowing your customers, right?
Mm,
Imagine this. You built a AI layer on top of all of your existing data sources, right? You have Salesforce, you have your outreach tools, you have a bunch of other activities that get tracked in your CRM. Now, ideally, if I'm going into a meeting with XYZ account, I would want to understand not just what are the priorities for the account, what are they doing currently, and how our solution can benefit them, but also internal context on what has already happened with them. You might have had a close lost opportunity 3 years back that
mm,
the sales is not aware of. You might have had a lot of conversation around a particular solution that you offer, but it is hidden in some obscure call recording somewhere. Now, the real and the most advantageous way of using AI is to bring all those to the front. To have context over whatever department that you are in. That's for a sales rep, context about the account and that particular opportunity, and all related opportunities to that is important, right? For a solutions engineer, the context around whatever problem statement is currently working on across all customers is important. For a customer service rep, if you look at it, they'll be more interested in, hey, what are the top 10 problems that I'm solving for the customers? And how do I take it back to product so
mm,
that they can innovate and make those solutions?
mm,
So that context bringing is what I'm most excited about because that is where you get a lot of insights. Data, just in the form of data, is not going to help anybody, right? And most companies, they use your commercial ChatGPT agents the way it is intended. But if you're using for contextualizing your internal data, there are companies that have come up with models where there is a very advanced level of understanding of the business process and a very advanced level of prompting for that particular use case.
okay.
Right? What I mean by that is, let's say you're solving for uh, a sales rep needing to understand whatever meetings have happened till date
Mm,
and
mm,
figuring out what are the challenges that the prospect has mentioned. Right? Let's take it can be a single opportunity, single account,
mm,
and you can have like multiple calls before the current call today. Right? Now, in this use case, if you are prompting, I need to understand what problems the customer has or the prospect has, it is only going to give you a one line answer.
mm, mm,
But if you are saying, hey, you are connected to my Salesforce instance, you are connected to my call recording instance,
mm,
bring in all the call recordings from the 10 calls I've previously had, bring in all the email activity and the call activity that I've had previously from my Salesforce, merge that, take these specific 10 fields on what they have told me or given me as information and give me this specific output in this specific format, right? That is the level of prompting that AI agentic companies are looking at right now
mm.
to give you data or insight that you can actually ingest and use.
Mm.
Otherwise, what happens is it is just garbage in, garbage out. AI totally works on that principle. If you're feeding it nothing, it's not going to give you anything. But if you are able to understand what is the specific use case you're trying to solve, prompt for that, and you need to give examples of the outputs also. So if you don't do that, what happens is AI will imagine and it will start hallucinating. But if you give it this very specific output that you are expecting, then it is able to take that format and give you the same outputs. Yeah. So basically, it is all really the magic, I think, lies in the way you prompt, right? And of course, there's a lot of technology behind it, and there are a lot of models that is being used currently. Deep.
Mhm.
So the the very concise version of all of this is in terms of the stage at which you are in as a company or as an entrepreneur. Uh, there are definite benefits to using AI, but with caution, right?
Mm.
With the right kind of security assessments and with the right kind of infosec arrangements, you can definitely get started on building a whole layer of AI on top of your existing systems that will reduce the time that your sales reps take to research an account, to create lead lists. They don't need to do all of that. The sales team needs to sell. I think that is where the end point is. I log in as a salesperson, I sit, and I just start talking to people. Like in an imaginary perfect sense, in my head at least, I log in and then auto dials, it sends me transcripts, and then I'm able to just focus on selling, right? I'm not wasting a single second on anything else but talking to prospects, understanding their challenges and solving them.
Okay.
Everything else for a salesperson is fluff. It is important, but it can be automated. And if that can be automated, then you should.
Even the first few touch points, right, with the customer and the salesperson, is that even like, okay, whatever the outbound, either it can be via email or a message, sorry, okay, yeah, email or a call. I think these things are already started getting automated, if I'm not wrong. Right? The where you believe they will work is maybe the second, third touch point where they talk to customer, understand their problems, and maybe the next time how the solution works. Maybe it can cut first two, three touch points and reach directly to the fourth step. Is that a right way I understood?
No. So all those individual touch points are necessary because see the sales cycle today for a mid-market or enterprise level SaaS organization is anywhere between 3 to 6 months at a minimum, right? Now, when you look at it, there are about 20 to 23 touch points at an average you need to close the sales. Say this can be whatever mode of communication you want to happen. Now, I'm talking about the context that GenAI can pull through all of those conversations to speed up the process of you reaching the closed one stage. This is just one use case. When you're looking at top of the funnel use cases from a lead standpoint, then there are sales operations use cases that come in, right? Which is what we talked about in terms of lead list automation, automating contact sourcing, automating, sales uploads on Salesforce, list maintaining database hygiene and all of that. So when RevOps or GTM teams are able to do that, the sales person is spending lesser and lesser time trying to make sure that their database hygiene is maintained and they're up to date. If as a salesperson I have to log in and spend 30 minutes researching an account, 1 hour downloading the list, moving special characters in my first name, last name, and then adding the email IDs, you don't need a salesperson for that. So there are multiple buckets within the automation framework that you could put this into. The highest, I think, in my opinion, we have reached, and this is more from a SaaS perspective. Obviously, there's a lot of other industries that use AI at more advanced levels. I think is that contextualization piece, and using that you can build more agents to solve for different use cases.
Mm.
So let's say I contextualize, I now have a bunch of information. What do I do with that? Can I give a optimal pricing for my customer through that information that I have? Or can I solution better for them? Or can I even push all of this information that I have taken and create a quote for the
Mm.
customer? The use cases are literally endless. You can now read it. You used to be able to do that even now today with just OCR, right? You can read a document and then you can ingest that information. AI is able to read a document and give more context to it and then input it into your CRM. Right.
Mm.
So if you think of just a day in the life of a sales person, then think of all of the friction points that they have, right? And start solving them one by one. Even if it is smaller organization, if it is an 10%, 30%, 50% sales team, right? Then when you look at what are the different friction points they have, they are the where do they spend most of their time today, right? And what is their challenge in terms of either accuracy, relevancy, or recency on anything that they are doing? You kind of start removing all of those friction points, and then
Mm.
you're finally at a stage where you say, "Hey, I do sales, and I do just that. I come, I talk, I go. Rest of it is taken care of."
Mm.
I think that is approaching very fast.
Mm.
And
Okay.
that is why it won't replace salespeople.
Mm. Mm.
So the way I look at it is it can definitely complement your role.
Mm.
There are certain, even big companies, the big four, they have announced that they have removed software engineering level one teams completely.
Mm.
They have only AI taking care of all of that. Now, there will be some functions that might be affected because coding is very logic driven,
Mm.
right? But when you're looking at customer facing functions, you go to market, customer support, and all of this, today you have agents that will do all of this automatically. You don't need a salesperson. There are fully built AI systems that act as AI teams that do sales.
Mm.
Like you have 5 people AI system that will do sales for you. But I think it can be complementary to your actual sales team, but in the long run, it is just going to be a tool at the end of the day, right? It
Mm.
is help you do your process, do your at least for customer facing roles and roles where you don't need. It's not a lot of repetitive tasks. I think it is going to complement you, and
Mm.
those who can actually learn how to use it, learn how understand how it works at a user level. You don't need to know RAG, and you don't need to know all the models that are out there in the world. All you need to know is to understand how to use it for your own use case, and maybe also understand in the back end how it works, and more importantly trust that data, right?
Mm.
Because adoption doesn't come without trust. And this is very true with sales teams because they've been doing sales for a long time. And there are specific reasons why in one sales team you will find that there are 5 people with different channels that they like. There are 5 people that like different approaches to sales, right? And that is what works for them. It is very personalized to that particular personality, right? You cannot just pull that away and plug in an AI agent and say, hey, this will do your job for you, right? Because if you take, like, they make all of their opportunities through cold calling, right? And they are very good at it. Now, no matter how many AI agents you bring in, it can optimize the process of cold calling, but it cannot replicate what you do as a cold caller
Hmm.
or as a seller. And that is where I think we'll end up, is AI complementing us beautifully in places where we need repetitive tasks done and we need automations. But at the end of the day, you're still talking to people in real life and you're having those
Fascinating.
conversations that are.
Hmm. Interesting. So, like, I'm just excited and like to know about what you do, right? Like, whatever you talk, that is coming from what you do, right? So, whatever the things that AI is missing now, and you are trying to solve that in your team. I mean, like, if you are picking up another AI tool that is in the market, and you be there, know where it fails, and you try to solve that. Like, is that how it is working for you at your job?
So we look at, uh,
I mean, that is one of your responsibilities.
yeah, I'll put it this way. We look at a challenge and we look at how to solve the challenge through AI, right? So, part of my responsibility is also looking at what are the tools available in the market for this specific use case, right? And the mistake that most companies could make is that in the FOMO of things, right, in the fear of missing out, you could look at everybody's using the AI, let me jump in, right? That is probably not the right approach to go about it. The way we are looking at it in my current role, at least, is how do we first clean up our own house, right?
Mm.
Internally within our team, how do we use AI to solve internal problems, right? You're starting small and you're trying to get a proof of concept for it. You're not going all in and saying, hey, let me get a $3 million AI engine that can sit and then do everything for me. Very, very small use cases within your own team where you know this is a problem. This is the kind of effort that the team is putting in, the kind of time that they are putting into get to an output, right? Now, my role is very simple in the sense that how do I reduce that time that they take and the effort that they take from, let's say, an hour to 5 minutes,
Mm.
right? If we are able to prove at a department level that, hey, we are able to solve for this, then you gradually scale it up, right? Because it is not just about the input and the output, like I said, but it is also largely about your customer data and your internal data as well. So there are a lot of compliance measures that we look into, and then vendors need to be compliant on all of those terms, and only then we onboard them. There's a whole process on InfoSec that goes on. But apart from that, the fact that you're solving for smaller problems within your department, starting small, and then you go wider in terms of org-wide problems. There are obviously others looking into org-wide challenges as well, but that happens in parallel. And use cases within AI can also look and feel a lot different based on what you're trying to solve for. CRM update use case that automatically picks up data and pushes it into your Salesforce. They can be a org-wide mandate for, let's say, a sales team or a marketing team to do a certain thing. So that's how that.
Got it. Got it. So, in a nutshell, you help your sales team work better, faster. So, yep, one final question on the GTM engineering side is who GTM engineer will report to? Who are you reporting to in your company now?
That's a good question. So, like I said earlier, revenue operations is the parent umbrella under which this comes in. The parent umbrella is revenue ops here, revenue operations, but it can be within any of the other buckets, right? It can be a sales ops team, it can be a martech team, it can be a marketing team. They might not specifically call it as GTM tools or GTM engineer or GTM engineering yet, and they don't need to, right?
Mm,
To
mm.
be honest, if you're doing this role, you're doing that role. It doesn't matter whether you're called it specifically, but there are a lot of companies that have started these specific pods that look at these specific challenges. To answer your question, I report into the head of revenue operations, and then there is like multiple pods within revenue operations that do multiple things.
Now, okay, I'm getting this question. Like, I want to ask this. Whatever I know, right? Your responsibilities, which we have spoken, which I heard from a RevOps person only. Like, this is how they work. What's the difference? Or it's just a new name for a RevOps person, a GTM engineer.
So GTM engineering is just part of revenue operations, because revenue operations involves a lot more than just tools. Right?
Okay.
It is looking at the overall company's objective, their revenue targets, sales forecasting, compensation management. There's like a whole umbrella of multiple things that come under RevOps.
Hmm.
You might have almost 15, 20 different definitions of RevOps,
Mhm.
and you would also have 15, 20 different buckets under RevOps, right? So, basically, revenue operations can be set up, at least here, the way it is set up is that you have a sales operations bucket under revenue operations, which handles research, list building, and sales side of things. And you have a deal desk, which basically looks at how deals progress and then closes deals, and then make sure that there is compliance and everything. And you have usually some sort of a GTM layer also on top with a Salesforce admin. There will be Salesforce developers that are under that bucket, and you might also have, let's say, just a sales operations specialist and a team that looks at all the grunt work, and they also look at strategy is a separate department. So you could go vertically or horizontally. Varies really from company to company, because the way business is structured, usually it is aligned to that. So if you are split by industry, you could have industry wise pods within your operations team, or if you're spread by region, then certain people can pick up that. Marketing and sales, you could have a separate operations pod under revenue operation.
Hmm.
So there is no set.
Is CS falls under that?
No, CS will get under sales and customer support function. Again, it differs. So because I have not seen any CS team report into RevOps, because of the fact that CS is more focused on, it's a post sales kind of a,
Yeah, yeah.
right. So that is clubbed with usually with sales,
Yeah. Mhm.
sales
Again, they
operation.
have a retention targets that has like multiple operational efforts involved, right? In that way, I thought it might come under maybe. What about is there anything called CS opt out there? I'm just curious to.
Could have it. I mean, so usually there's like a couple of people within customer success that handle that, then they interface with revenue operations team. And some companies might have, but I've not heard of a very specific seniors ops kind of a role. But operations would usually solve for those use cases, sales ops, right? So all of that would basically fall under the bucket of sales operations.
Yeah, like you said, there are like multiple explanations there. I'm
Right.
still trying to understand, but couldn't. Like now, I have three different words. One is GTM engineering that works on the sales process. RevOps is something above that. It works, takes care of sales process. Okay, and sales people, their work, company revenue targets, business targets, strategy is also involved. Operations of everyone, and now sales ops. How it works.
So sales operations is very specific to the strategy side as well as the operations side of how sales teams are going to reach their targets.
Okay.
So how can we help to make sure that the processes are in place to make specifically the sales team hit their targets? In very simple terms, it is a bit more complex. Again, the
I think you can go a bit more complex to get that difference.
um, see, in my previous role, I handled a research team which did account research and industry research on companies that we target. There was a lead generation team which basically looks at who are our right target customers and then source the lead and contact information for that, enrich it, get it into Salesforce and all of that. And then we also had a Salesforce administrator as well as a Salesforce system. So in fact, you could put sales operations and GTM hand in hand alongside, and then you have RevOps on top, right? So it is not necessarily a separate function in itself. It's just how you define it internally within the organization. Sales operations, GTM, all of that can be very close. They are just called different. That's all.
Yeah, so what I could understand is it's about the company again. I've seen companies where the CS team reported to product team.
Mm.
Sometimes the CS team reported to a marketing team. The general way I've seen is, of course, a CS team reporting to a sales team, right? The sales functional head. But yeah, like according to companies, they define the responsibilities. Also seen like maybe I can state examples in my side also. A product design as a separate function also it works, and mostly it works under product design, I mean product function. And also sometimes there is a design function all alone. They work with product and marketing team when it is needed. There are teams like that, there are companies like that, and responsibilities change. Yeah. Thanks, Vinay. Thanks for doing this on a Saturday evening. Yep, right after this, hope you have also some plans.
Yes. I Do I get a question? Yeah.
Yeah,
I just
please
have
go
one.
ahead. Yeah, of course.
What motivated you to start this podcast?
Dude,
I'm sure you've said this before, but for the benefit of me and the audience, uh, why a podcast and why on this?
so it was like during my first year of college, 4 years back. Out of curiosity, I want to talk to founders out there and understand what they do. I was reading a couple of books, but definitely know that that is not something happening in real. Now I can easily say the drastic difference between what's in the book and what's happening in person. And of course, it changes geographically, a lot of things involved, right? So out of that curiosity started, did till 40 episodes back in 21. Then the pace slowed, got other things to do. Now kind of in a pace where I can trying to push like maybe a couple of episodes a month and going behind what excites me and have good set of a small number of audience that
Okay.
every business podcast have, and of course someone who is doing consistently and who is producing some good quality content. I mean content as in both in terms of production quality and also content quality. I'm trying to compete with them the content quality, which what we speak. Production quality not yet there because there are like financial factor also comes in, right? Uh, Getting there, we'll see. So yep, it's just curiosity. You know, like initially had like a few side projects with that. I want to monetarily also had few targets. Now nothing, just want to meet people, see what they do in their work. That's it.
Awesome. That's great.
Yes, yes. Yeah,
Good
thanks
job.
for the question because I feel a little good now.
Yeah.
Yes. Right, Vinay. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for doing this. Yes.
Okay, have a happy weekend. Bye.